Welcome to the channel. My name's Kris. You're in for the scariest ride of your life. It's a reaction channel with me. This is the American Revolution. Masterstroke at Cowpens, 1781. I believe Cowpens was Daniel Morgan. So before we get started, if you can click that little thumbs up button, that helps me out. Click on the subscribe button, that helps me out. And you can voluntarily click on the thanks button, donate to the channel, request a video. Your name sponsors that video. Okay? All right. Here goes the video.
In collaboration with our friends at the channel, His Majesty's 10th Regiment of Foot. Find out more in the links in the description. By the end of 17...
Hold on, sorry. His Majesty's 10th Regiment of Foot, redcoat.org. American. I don't support no redcoats. American. Merc. Sorry. All right. I was just joking. I was just goofing.
In the links in the description. By the end of 1780, the war is about to enter its 6th bloody year, and both sides are facing significant recruitment, supply, and morale issues. Commanders on both sides feel in perilous positions and write furiously to either Parliament or Congress, demanding more men and resources, while complaining about increasingly hostile locals. In the south, and the most active theatre of the war, both armies lick their wounds and prepare for what will soon become the most decisive year of the war in 1781. Through 1780, the war in the north seemed to be at a standstill. Both sides had planned significant operations. The Franco-American coalition hoped to attack New York, while the British considered striking against the French expeditionary forces at Rhode Island, which, owed to its size and mobility, poses a serious threat to British forces across the Americas. But neither plans are realised, despite the bulk of both armies facing off against each other in the north. There is disagreement between Washington and his French counterpart, Count Rochambeau, over strategy, while the commander of British forces, General Clinton, had placed his faith in a conspiracy to capture West Point with the defector Benedict Arnold. Such a coup would have blocked future attacks against New York and made Washington's position in the region precarious. But the plot fails and the deadlock resumes. Back in the South, by December 1780,
Major John Andre was hanged in America. Excuse me. There is a... Hold on. Okay, so let me make sure I'm... Okay. So yeah, this is... there used to be a tree here where this monument is. Major John Andre. And then a bunch of words. My fault. But yeah, there used to be a tree here. And this is the tree where he was hanged. I'm going to go on a limb and say these homes weren't here. And this cul-de-sac, or this little roundabout, we'll say that, probably wasn't either or either. And so yeah, this is where John Andre was hanged, and he was buried, and then I think after the war was returned to England. Let me double check. Hold on. Real fast. Here's the thing. Monument was constructed in 1879. Okay, I didn't realize they waited that long. On February 22nd, 1822, the monument was hacked and mutilated by George Hendricks of New York. What a dick. An explosion slightly damaged the monument. It was felt that a monument to a British spy was an insult to George Washington. No, not really. It's history. Okay, so this must be the original monument. So anyways, okay, yeah, here you go. Here died October 2nd, 1780, 17 AG. Major John Andre of the British Army, who entered the American lines on a secret mission to Benedict Arnold for the surrender of West Point, was taken prisoner, tried, and condemned as a spy. His death, though according to the stern code of war, moved even his enemies to pity. I'll say the one thing about him was he put the noose around his own neck. He wanted, back then it was all, I want to be known as a man, and, I died with honor and blah, blah, blah. Even though being hanged as a spy was, being hanged was like the lowest. Firing squad was more, not manly. Yep, that was my knee you just coughed up on. Thank you, I appreciate that. It was, not that it was more manly. It was, a higher honor. Being hanged was like the low, like that's what you did to the lowest of lows, and a spy was the lowest of lows. Sorry, and both armies mourned the fate of one so brave, so young and brave. 1821, his remains were stop. You've got to move. His remains were removed to Westminster Abbey 100 years after his execution. What? 100 years after his 1821, his remains were removed to Westminster Abbey. If he died in 1780, that's 41 years. Am I reading this wrong? Is somebody? Oh, I am reading it wrong. 100 years after his execution, the stone was placed. I should have kept reading. The stone was placed above the spot where he lay, not to perpetuate the record of strife, but in token of those better feelings which have since united the nation, one in race and language and religion, when the earnest hope that friendly union will never be broken. Arthur Stanley, Dean of Westminster. Yeah. So give me 1 second. I want to check one more thing. Okay. As I was scrolling down, there's a little thing here. Sorry. Little throat burp. Meanwhile, the Americans ruled. Andre should be considered a spy and executed. Blah, blah, blah. Major General Benedict Arnold, American patriot, resided here from 1796 until his death in June 14th, 1801. Now, this is in England. But anyways, what I was showing, what I was going to show you was this is now holding the remains, well, I think here, of Major John Andre in Westminster Abbey. He's always fascinated me. I don't know why. I think it was just kind of like the playboy of his time. I believe he came from a rich family. And, yeah. He was in love with the same woman, Peggy Shippen, that Benedict Arnold married. If you've never gotten a chance to see Turn Washington Spies, it's so good. Of course, season 4 is only digital. They won't release it on DVD. There's only 4 seasons, but they won't release it on DVD, which really infuriates me. But, yeah, I think you can see it on Amazon Prime. If you haven't seen it, I'm not kidding you. Take a weekend, watch season 1, next weekend season 2, or a little bit. It's so good. It's so good. I absolutely love that. And then after the season, this has nothing to do with the video. My apologies. After the season was over is when I got a chance to go to, because they filmed in Virginia, in Colonial Williamsburg and stuff like that. And then I went there and I started recognizing, oh, they use this building in Williamsburg, and oh, they use this location, and oh, they use this. It became really cool. Back to the video.
Brigadier General Nathaniel Greene arrives at the Continental Camp at Charlotte to finally relieve the disgraced Horatio Gates. Greene is a seasoned commander, having fought with Washington from Boston to Trenton. He was also familiar with his opponent, General Charles Cornwallis, who he had faced at Brandywine, Germantown, and Monmouth. Greene has brought with him other veteran officers, including the highly capable and popular General Daniel Morgan, who had distinguished himself at Quebec and Saratoga.
Daniel. Wow. Daniel Morgan's a stud. Nathaniel Greene, unfortunately, after the war, I think 1785-ish, 84, 85, he stayed in the military. But I want to say 84, 85. He died of heat stroke, I believe. And I know Washington was just devastated because he loved Nathaniel Greene. He loved Knox. He loved Greene. He loved Hamilton. He had a little falling out with Hamilton. But yeah, Knox and Greene were just two guys that he found. He just plucked out of nowhere. But anyways, that's for the future. Back to this video.
But Greene faces a number of problems. On his way south, he'd receive little to no support from state legislators who claim they have no funds or resources to give.
I think some of those guys were still so pro-Gates that Greene's hiring was who Washington wanted. And these guys wanted Washington out. So they were willing to find another excuse to not back Washington. That's strictly my opinion on that.
The army he inherits consists of just 1,400 men, many of which are still poorly equipped. To make matters worse, the army has just 3 days' supply of food, and with the continental currency being almost worthless, fresh provisions are increasingly hard to come by. Greene is under orders to wear down the equally resource-strapped British army. This follows Washington's strategy at the dawn of 1781. Conduct a Fabian-style war of attrition while relying on a growing international coalition to force Britain to negotiate.
Sorry, I want to read that. Fabian strategy to wear down the British army. Yeah. Build international coalition. Yeah, France, Spain, and the Dutch Republic. Are all now at war with Britain and the allies of the United States, Russia, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Prussia, Austria, and Portugal create the League of Armed Neutrality, putting economic pressure on Britain. Wow. Am I misremembering? But did Portugal? I know that they didn't send men, but did Portugal help with military aid? That's a lot of countries going after Britain, and yet at the end of this war, Britain wins. The only thing they lost was the Americas. So just put that in perspective when you think about, the foundation of America and becoming an independent country. That was the only thing they lost. That was it.
To force Britain to negotiate. Greene is not yet ready to face the British, who significantly outnumber his army, and he needs time and space to prepare his forces. In late December, just 2 weeks after taking command, Greene takes a bold and controversial decision. Without holding a war council and against classical military judgment, he decides to split his forces. Dividing an army when outnumbered is a huge risk.
It worked for Robert E. Lee during the Civil War, so sometimes crazy plans do tend to work every now and then. Don't make it a habit, but every now and then, sometimes the enemy looks at it and says, that's too ridiculous. They're not going to do it. And then they do it. and it happens to win. Things just happen, and you're like, huh. Well, let's not make that a common occurrence, because the next time it won't work. But let's be grateful that it did the first time, and let's not risk it again.
Green hopes that by doing so, he can better support the irregulars fighting in the south, while threatening the rear of any British advance north. But this also leaves him vulnerable to be defeated in detail. In late December, Greene begins to move east to build his strength, while feinting an attack against Camden. Daniel Morgan, meanwhile, marches west with 600 Continentals and orders to threaten 96 and other British outposts. Further south, General Cornwallis faces an equally challenging situation. His instructions from Clinton are to pacify the southern states, while keeping General Greene at bay. At this point in the war, the British also hope to wear down their opponent and force Congress to the negotiating table. Both sides perhaps recognise that outright victory is unlikely, and what matters now is developing the strongest hand possible for inevitable peace talks. For the British and General Clinton, successful campaigns in 1781 could ensure that at least New York, Canada, and much of the South remain firmly within the Empire. Through his network of spies, Cornwallis is well aware of Greene's movements and the curious decision to split the Continental Army. Through reinforcements and loyalist recruitment, his army has now grown to almost 10,000 men. But the guerrilla fighting means that he cannot concentrate his army, and instead, he must commit Lord Rawdon and 5,000 troops to garrison a string of forts to fight the growing Patriot irregulars. His main army, meanwhile, of some 3,200 men, are to conduct offensive operations into North Carolina. This is important for Cornwallis, who believes that the guerrilla fighting in South Carolina could be dramatically reduced if the Continentals are pushed further north, thereby cutting critical supplies to the irregulars. A third force of 1,100 men under the aggressive and daring cavalry commander, Lieutenant Colonel Bannister Tarleton, is sent to reinforce 96 against a suspected attack by Morgan. In early January, Cornwallis breaks camp and slowly starts moving towards North Carolina and his hopeful confrontation with Greene. Morgan, upon hearing of Tarleton's position, begins moving north to avoid becoming trapped between the two British armies in the field. But Tarleton, under fresh orders to catch and destroy Morgan, is advancing quicker than expected. The British build rafts and bridges to cross a number of rivers in rapid succession and close the gap in a dramatic but exhausting 12-day pursuit. Finally, on the 16th of January, Tarleton's force catches up to Morgan before they are able to cross the now swollen Broad River. So as not to be caught crossing, Morgan camps at Hannah's Cowpens and prepares to make a stand.
He didn't catch Morgan at Cowpens. Morgan stopped at Cowpens and basically was like, okay, this is where we take that stand. Tarleton is not going to believe that any reasonable person would actually pick this ground to fight. So as bad as it is for us, it's going to be bad for them. And in one aspect, any advantage that they may have is going to be maybe neutralized in terms of how terrible this land is. This is just my opinion. I've never been able to speak to Daniel Morgan, can't get a hold of him. He won't return texts, so I'm not sure 100%. Tarleton, I can't text him. Phone calls in Europe and all that stuff, it's just a higher cost. And so I've just never made that phone call.
That evening, Morgan discusses his plan with senior officers. He is well aware of his opponent, Tarleton, and his usually aggressive tactics. He is also aware that the British have no respect for his militia, who have broken time and time again in battle. Morgan has 18 to 1900 men under his command, mostly from the Carolinas and Virginia, including 170 dragoons, 450 continentals and regulars, and roughly 1,300 militia. For many of the men, they cannot wait to fight the hated Bloody Tarleton and his now infamous British Legion. That includes the young Continental Cavalry commander, Colonel William Washington, who had been personally defeated by Tarleton twice the previous year and hungers for revenge.
Am I wrong on thinking William Washington is related to Washington? Hold on, I want to check just so I don't sound stupid. Okay. Yes, William Washington was a distant cousin of George Washington. Specifically, he was a second cousin once removed. I don't understand the once removed, like the removed part. On a side note, I've done 23andMe, and it's like, this is your cousin, 6 times 8 removed. I'm like, I don't know what that means. Are we fighting? I don't get it. Once removed, according to the American Battlefield Trust. Okay, American Battlefield Trust. Absolutely believe that. And the National Park Service. American Battlefield Trust, anything they say, I instantly am like, yep, that's a fact. 150%. The Battle of Cowpens, where William Washington played a significant role. I'm not going to get any further as I read this, in case you don't know what happened. The Battle of Cowpens, where William Washington played a significant role, was a key victory for the Continental Army during the American Revolutionary War. Shh, let's keep that between us. All right? I'm gonna, for the people who weren't listening, I'm gonna unpause the video and we're gonna be like, "Go Britain!" And then the people will watch it and be like, "Oh my goodness, we thought Britain was gonna win. You were rooting for them," and then they'll realize we got them. Go
Despite
Britain!
their backs against the river, Morgan.
Did you do it? Did you say it? I'm gonna go back. Go Britain! Did you say it? Okay, let's do this.
For revenge. Despite their backs against the river, Morgan is confident in his position. He hopes the lack of an escape route will compel his men to fight hard for their very survival. Morgan is also making a shrewd strategic calculation. He knows Tarleton is hunting him and that Cornwallis is nearby, only 2 days' march away. By fighting today, he at least chooses the field with a well-rested and supplied army, a luxury he may not have if the retreat continues. Throughout the night, he
That's a very fair point, too.
walks the camp, encouraging his men and giving detailed instructions for the next day. Morgan also organizes a good breakfast and 24 rounds of ammunition per soldier.
I'm sorry. Have you ever seen Band of Brothers? I love that show. There's a part in is it the first episode? I almost said, gonorrhea. And let's just say you've seen it. All right. Gonorrhea is a character. It's not the name. It's the nickname. Why is the name slipped me, but gonorrhea is, oh my goodness. I can see the actor and I can see the real person. No, it's not malarkey. Anyways, sorry. There's a part on the first episode where gonorrhea himself is sitting there, and as they said, Morgan gave all of his guys good breakfast. There's a part on there where they're getting ready to jump for D-Day for Normandy, and they're reading this thing. Yes, we're going to make the jump, and this is going to drive me crazy, but I will remember it. I'll remember his name as soon as the video ends. Oh. Anyways, the guy who's playing that character goes, he understands that they're going to do the jump that night, and he goes, that's why they gave us ice cream. And it just makes me think of Daniel Morgan and the fact that he gave all of his guys a great breakfast knowing the battle's coming. I want you to be good. Well, on this one, they kept, the jump's going to happen tonight. Nope, bad weather, no jump tonight. The jump's going to happen the next night. Nope, something happened, no jump tonight. The jump's going to happen this, and he gives everybody ice cream, and the guy Gonorrhea is just like, that's why we got the ice cream. If it makes no sense to you, I apologize, but it's making me chuckle, so that's okay.
Cowpens is a perfect place for a battle, an open meadow with few trees and gently rolling hills. The ground, used for cattle grazing, is also devoid of undergrowth, making it ideal for cavalry movements. Further south, the 26-year-old Bannister Tarleton has been kept well informed of Morgan's position by local loyalists and continental deserters. Desperate to catch up to Morgan, he marches his 1,100 men through the night. Tarleton believes that time is of the essence. If Morgan is allowed to cross the broad river, he may escape completely. Although without sleep and having run out of food 2 days prior, his army is well motivated and trained. Tarleton has a crack force composed of 300 dragoons, 500 regulars, including an elite Highland regiment, and almost 300 provincials and militia. Almost half his army are loyalist colonials, including the dreaded and formidable British Legion.
I didn't realize he was 26 years old. That's crazy. Which does make a little sense because Daniel Morgan feels like he's 100 at this time. Daniel Morgan's been through it. So he's a little, I'm sorry for the air. I have a fan on me, so I apologize. Daniel Morgan's been through it. So he understands, and I'm going to say this, but I don't mean it negatively. He appreciates the fact that there could be potentially the loss of life in this battle. Not saying that Tarleton doesn't. I'm not trying to phrase it like that. Tarleton understands that people will die in this battle. But Tarleton's 26. Daniel Morgan, I swear, I said 100, but is he in his 40s or 50s? 60s? He has seen a lot more, so he mentally understands. How am I trying to phrase this? Because I'm not trying to bash Tarleton. Tarleton's young, and he's full of piss and vigor, right? Piss and vigor? Piss and vinegar? He's got all three of them. Piss, vigor, and vinegar. And he's also trying to continue to build a name for himself. While Daniel Morgan, on the other hand, he's seen battle. So he might understand what Tarleton's trying to do. Tarleton, I don't think, has had the fighting experience that someone like Morgan's had. If he was facing Green was young. I want to say Green was in his 30s, maybe in late 20s. It's a much different battle. And that's strictly my opinion. What do I know? But I think the battle is different then. But against Morgan, somebody who understands terrain, because Morgan picked this. He understands terrain. He understands the all-out approach to how to face a gung-ho kind of Tarleton. Maybe Tarleton blows the socks off of Morgan in this battle, but we know how it ends. So I think that Tarleton put himself in a bad situation.
At 7 a.m., green-jacketed Legion dragoons begin to slowly emerge from the tree lines. They are soon followed by fast-marching Scarlet infantrymen.
7 a.m., by the way. They've marched all night to get to this battlefield. And Morgan's men slept well, had a fantastic breakfast. So right off the bat, one side is they're refreshed. And the other side's marched all night. It's small things like this that really do dictate how a battle will go.
And Highlanders in their tartan kilts. To Tarleton's sheer delight and surprise, he can just about see the Continentals forming for battle. He knows he has his enemy trapped against the broad river and, without waiting to consult his senior officers or for his full force to arrive, Tarleton orders his army to deploy.
Is there any part of this where Tarleton thought, I have them trapped against the river, let's attack, instead of, we do have them trapped against the river, but why is he not crossing? Why does it look like they've camped? Why is there no attempt to cross the river? Like, these are questions that should be asked. Why is it that they seem ready to fight on this ground that they've chosen, not us, not Tarleton? Why do they seem ready to fight and they're refreshed? These are things that I think a Tarleton doesn't ask. But if you flip it, this is what Daniel Morgan might ask. And Daniel Morgan might get to a point where maybe his scouts get ahead, he sees the situation, and he camps further back. And he goes, well, let's just wait. Let's just regroup. Let's see what they're going to do. If they're going to cross, we'll chase, right? We'll attack as they're going to cross. But if they're not going to cross, what's their advantage here? Because everyone wants to know, what is the advantage? Like, if somebody's choosing a ground to fight on, why are they choosing that ground? What advantage do they have? These are just my opinions on this, but this is something that I think is legit. But in the end, what the hell do I know? I wasn't there.
In the gloom before daybreak, the British can see little of their enemy. A thin line of men on a ridge, likely skirmishers, appear to mask a main force behind them. Tarleton, hungry for more information on the continental positions, orders forward 50 Legion dragoons to drive off the skirmishers. As the dragoons charge forward on the center and right, 150 Patriot riflemen from Georgia and the Carolinas start to take aim. Although militia, they have extensive frontier service and know how to handle cavalry. At 50 yards, they open a deadly accurate volley. The dragoons gallop on, but the riflemen do not break as expected and hide behind trees and other obstacles, while shooting down a number of horsemen, eventually forcing them back. As his American cavalry withdraw, unsuccessful in their mission, Tarleton considers his options. With the skirmishers unmoved, he still doesn't have a good view of the main enemy line. He could wait for sunrise and attempt to gather more information, but if the force in front of him is just a rearguard, the pause may give Morgan the time he needs to slip across the river and escape.
Okay, so I didn't think about that. If it's a rear guard, they're protecting the potential escape across the river. I didn't think about that. That's a very good point. Because if you're Tarleton, if this is the rear guard, you want to knock them out and get them to disperse as fast as possible so you can start hitting these guys as they're trying to cross the river. Yeah. Okay, I just countered everything I just said. I understand. But yeah, that's okay. From Tarleton's vantage point, I understand that. But yeah, I don't. I'm just trying so many like what ifs, devil's advocates. You have to understand. I'm just trying to not nitpick. Terrible phrase there, Kris. I'm trying to understand it a little better, which will never be 100%. But this fascinates me.
Predictably, Tarleton makes the decision to attack. Well-drilled Legion and light infantry start the assault on the right, with drums beating and the men shouting battle cries. For most of the militia watching on, it is the first time seeing British regulars, with their customary precision, marching towards them with sharp uniforms and glinting bayonets. On both British flanks there are 50 dragoons, with several hundred more in reserve. As the British approach the skirmisher line, deadly rifle fire begins to take its toll, particularly among officers who are being targeted to reduce British command and control. The British for the most part hold their fire and use the threat of their bayonets to push back the riflemen, who slowly withdraw in good order to the line behind them. As the advance continues, a militia line of 1,300 men soon becomes fully visible, stationed at the bottom of the slope. Both commanders are with their men, Morgan moving between his militia cracking jokes, while Tarleton is in the front ranks shouting his men on. The fast-moving British line soon comes within 50 yards of the militia, who open fire. Losses, particularly among British officers, are horrific.
If you heard Daniel Morgan was cracking jokes with his people, which is fine, but Tarleton was in the front leading his men, you will never, as much as I, as an American, despise Bannister Tarleton, and yet at the same time, if you flip it and you put Bannister Tarleton as an American and the things that he did, I would be like, well, look, we had to do it to get the British to leave us alone. I understand. I'm a hypocrite on that aspect. I completely get it. I understand completely. I admit it. You'll never hear me say Bannister Tarleton is a coward. He is not. In terms of leading his men into battle, he's 26. He thinks he's invincible. As every young person and into their 20s is, he's also a member of the British military. He is invincible in his mind.
With 2/3 of some companies becoming casualties. The British stubbornly continue to close another 15 yards before returning fire of their own. But the British tend to overshoot targets, a problem made worse when firing downhill and the musket balls mostly fly over the militia's heads. Although their fire is ineffective, the bayonet charge that follows it is not. As the regulars surge forward, across the line, the militia gives way after firing once. Except on the left, where, just before the British light infantry are able to close, a second devastating volley is released, throwing the regulars back. But the militia eventually gives way nonetheless, and, despite the high casualties, the British can now sense victory.
The militia can't stick around if everyone else is fleeing. Obviously, these people, instead of chasing, could turn and hit the flank here. They could turn and hit the flank here. And if they get past, understand that I'm trying to imitate them moving. They get past and then turn around. They get here. They could almost just kind of semi-surround and eliminate what appears to be one of the stronger units, a stronger couple of units. So yeah, they have to
and
run.
Start to charge out of rank up the next hill in pursuit. To Tarleton, the collapse of the Continental Militia signals a total rout, and dragoons are quickly dispatched to seal the day. But as the main British line reaches the crest of the hill, to their shock, a third line of infantry suddenly becomes visible. The Continental regulars, in their blue and white uniforms with bayonets gleaming, are formed up and waiting for them. More concerning still for the British, instead of dispersing in all directions as usual, the militia is pouring through gaps in the third line and reorganizing as if pre-planned. Stunned British officers, only moments earlier certain of victory, quickly scramble to hold and then reform their men.
Morgan had this let's attack and then retreat, cause them to come in, and there's going to be our line here, and then we attack, we're going to kill some, we're going to lose some. Then we retreat to a bigger line, and eventually they're going to be outnumbered. And Morgan's plan was, let's just keep, kill them off, bring them in, kill them off, bring them in, kill them off, bring them in. Eventually, they're going to realize there's just more. And even when they get to this line, if they started retreating again, I'm pointing, but if they started retreating again, the British have to think, is there a bigger line back here that we're not seeing? It's going to wear on you psychologically.
Without much delay, the now bruised British line is soon reorganised and at the Continentals as both sides begin firing volleys. At the same time, 800 militiamen are catching their breath behind the safety of the fresh Continental line. As officers shout at their men to begin reforming, disaster strikes. British dragoons have broken through the Continental left and are now charging at full gallop over a small hill and directly into the militia. The attack comes out of nowhere, and within seconds, dragoons are slashing their way through the mass of panicked troops, who start to scatter. This is a disaster for Morgan. A rout behind his main line could quickly spread and end the battle in defeat. Further to the rear, commanding the Continental Cavalry, Colonel William Washington has been ordered to respond to both crisis and opportunity. Seeing the militia in flight, he has immediately moved forward to counterattack. Now it was the turn of the British to be caught off guard, as the white-coated Continental Dragoons waste no time in engaging their counterparts. A bloody melee ensues, but the British, outnumbered and disorganised, are quickly overwhelmed. Almost half the British Dragoons are soon cut down, while the rest retreat for their lives. Morgan too is able to stop the militia from routing as he rides in front of them, waving his sword and crying out to rally. Disaster has been narrowly averted. On the main line, volleys are still being exchanged as the nerve of both armies is pushed to the limit. Officers are in the thick of the fighting, including Tarleton and soon Morgan, inspiring their men to fight on.
And by the way, that was real footage from the Revolutionary War. You can't lie on YouTube, you have to take my word for it.
To break the deadlock, Tarleton moves to envelop the Continental right. It is now the turn of his Highland reserves, and a new sound is added to the battlefield. Bagpipes open as the Scots advance on the left. To counter the new threat, the Continental right is ordered to wheel around and face their enemy. But in the confusion of battle, the orders are misunderstood. Instead, the Virginians start marching to the rear, followed by most of the Continental line. But it is not a rout, and cohesion is maintained. For the British infantry, exhausted but unbroken, seeing the back of their enemy gives them renewed confidence. Without orders, a spontaneous bayonet charge erupts across the line as men rush forward with cries of victory. But the Continental movements have been misunderstood. As the Highlanders get within 10 yards, the Continentals have turned and fire a devastating volley that kills or wounds almost half the regiment. A counter bayonet charge immediately follows, supported by Colonel Washington's cavalry, who charge the British flank. Breaking Highlanders is no mean feat, and the Scots desperately fight on. The melee is bloody, but increasingly isolated, and with the reformed militia now joining the fight against them, the unthinkable soon occurs, and the 71st Highlanders break. With the collapse of the left, the rest of the now exhausted British line can do no more, and whole units either begin surrendering on the spot or running for their lives. British artillery fire on, refusing to surrender, and true to their code of honour, they are all killed or wounded to the man, protecting their guns. Tarleton, not wanting to believe the battle lost, implores his Legion Dragoons, still in reserve, to counterattack. But seeing the writing on the wall, they uncharacteristically refuse his orders, turn about, and abruptly leave the field. Tarleton, not giving up, is able to rally other cavalry and soon charges in a desperate final gambit. Colonel Washington's cavalry soon meet them, and in the brief struggle, force them back. Amongst the chaos, Washington spots Tarleton riding away with several officers, and immediately gallops straight after his nemesis. Tarleton turns, charges back to face him, and a swirling duel of horses and sabres begins. In the collision, Washington's sword is broken by a Legion officer, but he is saved first by his servant, who shoots the officer, and then by a friendly sergeant who blocks another blow. Tarleton himself next swings, but Washington parries with the hilt of his sabre. In the desperate and furious melee, lasting just seconds, Tarleton draws a pistol and fires, missing Washington by inches. After lightly firing the last shot of the battle, Tarleton gallops away, fleeing south with his legion. In less than an hour, the battle was over, and Tarleton had lost almost 90% of his army, including over 300 killed and wounded, and 700 prisoners, compared to relatively light Continental casualties. Morgan had faced a deadly foe, and in stark contrast to the Battle of Camden, he had masterfully understood his enemy's confidence and aggression, and used it against them. The evening before, Morgan had made it clear to his men that he intended to draw the British in and exhaust them over 3 lines of battle. Everyone therefore understood their role and knew not to panic when seeing friendly units retreating. Morgan had skillfully turned the inevitable withdrawal of the militia, as they had done time and again previously, to an integral part of his plan and bait for the British.
You're setting out certain groups. Their job is to really shoot, reload if possible, shoot, and then, oh no, and run. And they're running to a line that is waiting for them, that's kind of open. And then as soon as they pass, they close, and now, boom, you've got round 2. And then a round 3. As I was saying, the British have to think, is there a round 4? Is there another group? How many of these do we have to go through? But when you go through 1, 2, and then 3, even if you realize, okay, this is the last unit that you're going to be facing, you yourself, if you're on the front lines, you faced the first unit of the Patriots. You fought the second unit. If you're still alive, you're now going to run into the third unit. That's a lot of adrenaline. That's a lot of that's draining you. While the second unit's fresh, the third unit's fresh. The first unit who fights, they retreat beyond the lines of the second unit. They catch their breath. Okay. All right, let's get back into it. And then everyone retreats to the third line. Again, another unit that's fresh. And these guys are getting behind them like, just to catch your breath in war has to be phenomenal. I've never been, but I got to believe that there's something to that you're just like, okay. All right, let's get more musket rounds, or I don't know what they were firing. 50 cal? I have no idea. Cannons out of a musket, whatever. You got to get more gunpowder. You're just to be able to take a breather, just like has to be phenomenal. But the British didn't have that luxury. Except for the units that didn't fight. Oh, what did I hit that button for? Except for the units that didn't fight, that at the very end were like, nah, we're not involved in this, man. We're out of here. And look, Tarleton, as you know, he's got the nickname of Butcher, deservedly so, but I won't call him a coward. I wouldn't. He was willing to die when sometimes some people weren't.
Tarleton, perhaps the most hated man in the South, had been thoroughly outgeneraled. Although a brilliant cavalry captain, he had shown an inability to command larger forces, pushing his small army to breaking point before the battle had even started, and then failing to understand his enemy before attacking. 25 miles away, Cornwallis, learning of the defeat, swears revenge and readies his main army to march north in pursuit. But the damage to British control of the south will soon be felt as support for the Patriot cause continues to grow. With all on the line, Cowpens is the first domino to fall in a year of increasingly decisive battles. Thank you for watching our series on the American Revolution.
Well, thank you for making it. I appreciate it. I love it. I enjoy it. History Rebels is awesome. And I encourage you, if you have any interest, just throw it on and start from the beginning and watch the videos themselves. They're great. I love this channel. They don't love me, I'm pretty sure, because they've never reached out to me and told me they love me. Warhawks has. And the Y Files, he reached out to me, which was crazy, because he was recently on Joe Rogan. Anyways, we're going to end this here. So I hope you enjoyed. And I will be, I've already done that one. Can't do that one again. There's a couple. You want to try that? You want to try saying that again? Spies of the American Revolution. Secret War. Spies of the American Revolution. Oh, fingers crossed they talk about... So fingers crossed they get into like Major John Andre, because clearly with the Benedict Arnold situation, and for sure, fingers crossed, they're gonna. Oh, why Vicksburg was more important than Gettysburg? Because Vicksburg was on the Mississippi. Sorry. Spies of the Revolution, I'm going to guess they're going to cover, more than likely, the Culper Spy Ring, which was named after Culper County. George Washington named the Culper Spy Ring because he was a surveyor in Culper County, Virginia. So he named it the Culper Spy Ring. Also on Turn Washington Spies on AMC. There's also a book on the things on that show. Anyways, I'm gonna end this here. It's been a really long video, so I apologize. So until next time, have a good day, have a good night.